Hello and welcome to this video. I'm gonna guide you through the process of building the differential for the A800 range of cars. So without further ado, let's get to it. So as you can see, I've already removed the gears from their part tree, making sure I left no mold flashing burr using a sharp hobby knife, making sure you have very smooth edges. To get the parts off the part tree, I like to use some flush side cutters for a very clean result, resulting in very minimal burrs. The first thing I'd like to do is to grab what I like to call the bottom half of the diff, but it's actually the female threaded part. Grab the O-ring, no grease, and with the 5.5 nut wrench, push it to the bottom, and you're gonna feel a click, meaning the O-ring is in place. Grab the bearing and insert it with your finger, making sure it goes really flush with the bottom of the case. Grab a bit of Diff oil, add a small drop. Grab the ST311 outboard shaft, the big shim, and with a twisting motion carefully insert the shaft through the bearing and the O-ring. With some tweezers, center the shim if needed all the way through. We're gonna insert the P46 rubber ball. And with the tool that I made myself, it's actually an old sway bar that I cut and bent. It fits perfectly inside the shaft. You're gonna push the ball all the way in. Grab the big bearing, out drive, and then the pin. Which you can secure with the black O-ring. Add a bit more oil. And you can fit the big planetary gear. Talking about differential shims, perhaps you have seen the mention of small shims in some of our setup sheets. Here's an example of these shims right there. Part number is SH5x7x04. It's the same thickness as the kit shims, however with a smaller outer diameter, allowing all to go behind the planetary gear. We found it gives better consistency to the diff over the duration of the run. Keep in mind though that they make the diff a bit softer and therefore the oil range needs to be adjusted. For a touring car we recommend a 3000 up to 7000 oil range with the big shim, and with the small shims from 5000 up to 10,000. So from there we can start filling the lower half of the diff, and we're gonna add oil roughly 1 millimeter above the bottom of the thread. We're gonna leave it aside from now, and we can move to the other half of the diff, the male side of the thread. We're gonna start by inserting the slim O-ring. This one is a bit tricky to install, so you can either use your fingers or any other tool. Just make sure you don't do any scratch to the O-ring. I like to use, for instance, a toothpick. I like to use a toothpick because it's not that sharp, so it's less risk of scratching the O-ring too much. Moving on, similar process as the other half, O-ring. Again using a 5.5 nut wrench, fill the click, bearing, making sure it feels flush with the case. Bit of oil. Big shim. Output shaft, similar twisting motion. Again, to make sure to not leave any scratch on the O-ring. And this time we're not gonna insert the rubber ball yet. We're gonna wait. This is gonna be one of the last steps. Bit more oil. Planetary gear. And then we can insert the smaller gears, the satellite, onto the crosspin. Small shims. And now you can grab this whole assembly between your fingers and carefully drop it into the other half of the diff, the upper half. And this assembly can go directly on top of the other half. So now we're gonna be careful not to cross thread the two assemblies. So first we're gonna go backwards and wait for the threads to match. We're gonna feel a click. Here it is. And then we can screw the assembly together. So since we didn't put the rubber ball yet, we're gonna see the oil starting to overflow through the hole. So we're gonna grab some paper tissue and wipe off the excess. So now we can apply some torque. So for that I'm going to use the Maxler multi-tool, which also comes handy for diff assembly. So now I can feel the O-ring is compressing. Again, wipe the excess. And now we're gonna wait about an hour, giving a chance for all the bubbles to escape from the top. In our case, we're using 5000 diff oil, so an hour should be enough. Thicker oil, you might want to wait a little bit longer. In the case of front wheel drive, when you're gonna use 100,000 or above, I would actually recommend letting the diff sit overnight before continuing with the build. Alright, about an hour has passed, and as you can see, the oil level seems to have gone down, so the bubbles have escaped and the oil level is actually a bit lower. Now we want to heat up the diff to expand the oil and have the excess overflow through the hole. So for that you can either use a cigarette lighter or even better a small torch like this. So turn it on and we're gonna apply a bit of heat to the diff body. Not too much, otherwise you have a chance to damage the O-ring, but just enough so that the oil expands and escapes. through the top. Wipe off the excess. You want the body of the diff to be just warm to the touch. So now we can seal the hole, grabbing the P46 rubber ball, insert it, and just as before, push it all the way in. Again, wipe off the excess. We're gonna check the torque. And you want it fairly snug. And this is enough. So now, big bearing, out drive, then pin. Sometimes the pin is a bit tight at first, so you can use some tweezers to make sure it goes all the way in and secure it with the black O-ring. Alright, the diff is basically assembled. Only left is the pulley. So you can see one side of the pulley mounts is flatter than the other. So this is where the pulley is gonna go, and on the pulley itself you have some indentation for these little braces, so it's gonna actually clip onto the mount. And for this step I really recommend using some thread locks on these screws because they are really small, so you cannot apply too much torque on them, and also since it's gonna compress the plastic, if you tighten too much the pulley is gonna go out of round. So it's important to not go overly tight, just a bit snug, and making sure the screws don't get loose thanks to a bit of thread lock. So not fully tight yet. You want the pulley to fall into place. And we're going to tighten all 3 screws in sequence, step by step. So again, not too tight, just fairly snug, and trust the thread lock to make sure the screws don't come off. But that's about it. Differential ready to be installed in the car. Thanks for watching, enjoy the rest of the build, or see you at another build video. Bye bye.